So I want to take a look back at the women's division from 2002 all the way to 2008, which was titled the Golden Era of Women's Wrestling. And in the forefront, you had Trish, Lita, you had Tori Wilson, you had Stacy Keibler, Victoria, Jazz, Molly Holly, Victoria, Ivory, Jacqueline. You had all the good work rate wrestlers, and then you had the sex appeal eye candy, and Tori Wilson and Stacy Keibler, I'm saying Candice Michelle, Trish Stratus obviously was eye candy, but then she morphed herself into a world-class athlete and took her craft more seriously than most of her. Now I want to say most, but I want to say probably a good portion of her colleagues, because you knew when it came to Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson, they were just there to show off their sex appeal. They were there to arouse the male audience in a lot of ways, right? As they did for me back in the day, admittedly so. So when it comes to this era, specifically of women's wrestling, it was at a time where women's wrestling was not taken seriously at all. And there is no interest in caring about the women's matches. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due when it comes to the women of that era, notably Trish and Lita, and Mickie James, Victoria, Jazz, Molly Holly. Like, they did their best to make you care about the in-ring action, what was going on inside the ring. Not much about sex appeal, not about bra and panties or TNA or, mud pie matches or pillow fights. In that era, it was pretty much needed, and it was appropriate for the era that we were in wrestling, because Ruthless Aggression era was about, it was almost like a spin-off of the Attitude Era, right? But things were more violent in the Ruthless Aggression era, and you still had that raunchiness. You still had the adult material involved in that era, and more skin was allowed to be showed. Before it all went to PG, we were given a mixture of wrestling, athleticism, and pretty sexy ass women on TV. Not to say that we don't have that mixture today, but there was more emphasis on diva, more emphasis on pretty faces and sex appeal. And when it came to Vince McMahon and how he viewed women, that is how he viewed them. That's pretty much how he wanted to present the females, in that type of light, so that you as an audience would not take them seriously as wrestlers, right? Even though they were given opportunities to work matches, and Trish and Lita, they really opened the door for what women's wrestling could look like in the future if taken more seriously. Okay, and it took a long time for that to actually come to fruition. We can all say Trish and Lita started that trend, right? When it came to their main event on Raw, it showed everyone that there are two ladies that can actually main event a Monday Night Raw. They can actually work a believable program and get people invested into their work, invested into their storyline. And, I think the main issue when it came to that, because if you paid attention to women's wrestling back in the day, from 2002 to I want to say 2008, right before PG, um, if you paid attention, you would know that there was moments of greatness when it came to the women, and that they did have potential. They did have what it took to, I don't want to say steal the show, but to put on a good show, right? If that makes sense. And the opportunities that they were given to be on TV, I thought they made the most out of it for what time they were given. And I thought, okay, these women are given probably 5, 6 minutes to work a match. I think that's plenty of time for them, you know. But a lot of people will probably say, well, timing was an issue for them. And it was to a certain degree, but I thought that the more inexperienced women wrestlers at the time, they didn't need 10 minutes to work a match if they were inexperienced and they were just, centerfold models coming in the wrestling world, and they're expected to be taken seriously as wrestlers, but they're only seen for their pretty looks and sex appeal, right? Like, you're not going to expect Stacy Keibler to wrestle an 8-minute match with a Trish or a Molly Holly at that time period, because she was not a wrestler. Her role was to be a valet, to be a pretty face, and I thought her in that role was very good. Like, there was half the women that did not need to wrestle, and the fans loved them anyway. Like, when you look at Tori Wilson did not need to win the women's championship. Like, there'll be some fans of women's wrestling and say, well, Tori Wilson should have been women's champion. But why? There is no need. I thought, her storylines, were enough to kind of, take, make you kind of take her seriously a little bit, and, to respect her as an in-ring performer. But she didn't need to win the title at all to really prove herself, you know, could she have been given opportunities to fight for the championship? Of course. Maybe be number one contender, or be shown in matches as a more competent wrestler, not just a pretty face, especially when she's been there for 5, 6 years. Same thing with Stacy Keibler, but at the end of the day, they knew their role. And when it came to Trish, Trish was an all around great performer, had the character, the wrestling ability, the looks, the entire package. And I thought women's wrestling has really improved since the Ruthless Aggression era period.